Hey everyone, Ronnie Landis here, and I'm about to bring to you guys one of the best raw chocolate making sessions that you guys have ever had. For some of you, probably the first one you've ever had. What I'm really into is raw chocolate herbal alchemy, and so many people have requested that I make a video going through the step-by-step process of how I make my superfood herbal raw chocolate. So I wanted to oblige all those people out there and bring you the broken down process and show you how we can make fantastic chocolate with all your favorite superfoods, using culinary principles to bring out the decadence of dark chocolate, but also make it medicinal. Incorporate the principles of herbalism from the Chinese system to the Ayurvedic system, and a few other little goodies in here to make this chocolate the best thing you've ever had. So walk with me over here and we're going to go through the first part of that process. Okay guys, so when you guys are making your raw chocolate, you have to break it down into a few steps, and it's a three-step process. The first thing that you guys have to do is you have to liquefy your butter. So that's what we have right here. This is called a double boiler, and the double boiler is basically where you take a pan like this, and this liquid right here is actually liquefied cacao butter, and that was solid before, and this comprises 1 cup. Okay, you can do, if you want to make a bigger batch, maybe you have 3 or 4, maybe even 6 people that you're making chocolate for, then you might do about 2 cups, but right now it's just me and one other person. So we're doing 1 cup of liquefied cacao butter. Again, what you're going to do is pour enough water in here for maybe coming up to the 1/4 cup mark, and then turn it on to medium heat and let it melt. And one really cool thing about cacao butter is that it's a noble fat. And what I mean by that is it has fatty crystals or fatty molecules that actually link up and bond together and create the crystalline structure. Similar to water, if you guys have been into kind of learning about water science, you might understand that water has a certain structure that embodies an intelligent message in the water. That's basically its hydrogen molecules. Well, cacao fat actually has a similar dynamic going on. It has molecules that crystallize together, and when you apply heat to it, they destructure and they start to break apart. And I'm going to show you what the principle or the practical application of that later is when we apply our intuition or our intention onto our chocolate. Okay, so follow us to the next thing we're going to do. Okay guys, we're back, and this is stage 2 of the Superfood Herbal Chocolate Alchemy session. And this is obviously my favorite part. This is the alchemy of it all. And when you're making chocolate, a lot of people have come up to me over the years, and whenever I give them chocolate, they've noticed that there's a distinct difference in the chocolate that I make than maybe some of the chocolate on the market or what they're used to. And one of the things that I attribute that to is it's in understanding how to ratio your ingredients, not just having the best ingredients and then kind of haphazardly throwing them all together. That's kind of amateur chocolatiering. What we want to get into is how to cultivate and how to harmonize our ingredients and understand the different ratios. That's going to come over time as you practice and kind of develop the 10,000 hours principle of mastering your craft. But to break it down simply, we're going to alchemize this together to create the best chocolate. So the first thing you need is your bowl, obviously, and we're going to put our ingredients into it. I've put together some well-strategized ingredients to bring in our herbs, to bring in our superfoods, and some of our basic ingredients that might go unnoticed, and I want to bring that out to the forefront so you guys can play with it in your own kitchen. Actually, the first thing, I'm going to break down a few principles, and after this, you guys can play with it on your own, use your own intuition. The first thing you want to do, though, when you're putting this together is create your layers of ingredients. This is why when I have chocolate, my chocolate usually has layers of flavor because I'm very focused on how I want to layer my ingredients. The first thing I'm going to do, let's say, for example, we have 1 or 1.5 cups of liquefied cacao butter. that's going to influence how much of the powdered ingredients I put in. To give you guys a reference point, this is cacao powder in this Myron glass right now. It's protected by the Myron glass. Check into that if you guys are interested in the best glass ever. And I'm going to put 8 tablespoons of cacao powder into the jar here. So we're just going to run through that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, great. So that's going to be our foundation. If we're going to build something like a building, we have to build a foundation for it to stand on. That's going to be your cacao powder. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use 2 tablespoons of maca root powder. And for those that don't know what maca is, it's a superfood from the Andes Mountains. It's actually the highest altitude crop grown in the Andes. And basically what it does is it helps regulate our nerves, our nervous system, our hormonal sequencing. So the sequencing of our androgens, for example, our testosterone. It's great for increasing sperm count, increasing our brain through our hypothalamic system. It's a fantastic superfood, and we're going to throw in 2 tablespoons right on top of the cacao. And another reason I like using maca in my alchemy is that it has a malty kind of feel, and it also, to some extent, is an emulsant. So it brings fats and sugar together and kind of creates like a cream. And speaking of a creamer, the next thing we're going to do as a sweetening agent is use something called lucuma. And lucuma is kind of like an egg fruit from Peru. And this is another emulsant. It brings together those elements of sugar and fat and creates a cream. So we got 2 tablespoons of lucuma. Throw that on top right there. And those 2 ingredients right there are going to create really a flavor foundation for us. Another part of the sweetener matrix is we're going to use mesquite powder. Mesquite is a very high calcium pod that's really good for balancing out the magnesium in the cacao, and it just adds a nice little subtle sweetness to this whole thing. The next ingredient we're going to use as the sweetening agent is one of my favorite botanical ingredients called vanilla. And most of us know vanilla, but most of us are used to vanilla extracts, which are actually synthetic. This is the whole ground vanilla powder. And if you've never had this, it's an experience to have the aroma of fresh vanilla. So we're going to use that in our chocolate. This is about 1 tablespoon of vanilla powder. Now, as we're going forward, we're really focusing on the sweeteners first. I'm actually going to take a step away from the rest of our sweeteners and move into some of our herbal emporium to kind of build the layering principles of our chocolate. So to start that off, let's see, we got so many goodies here to play with. Let's start with shaga mushroom. So if you've been into Chinese herbs or you've been into this whole kind of tonic herbal revolution going on, shaga mushroom, or the Latin binomial Inonitis obliquus, this is one of the best herbs ever. It's one of my favorite herbs. It's gene protective, meaning it actually protects our epigenetic expression. And that basically is just our genetics. It really is amazing for protecting our cellular expression, meaning that it is anti-C word, anti-cancer. It's very powerful antioxidant. In fact, next to cacao, it's the #1 antioxidant substance that's been found in the world. We're going to throw in 1 tablespoon of shaga mushroom. Okay, so that's the first herb we're going to use. The next thing we have, what do we have here? Reishi mushroom, and this is Dawnwood reishi mushroom from Rising Star Herbs. And shaga and reishi are like the king and queen. Shaga is the king of the mushrooms, reishi is the queen of the mushrooms, and my personal thing is that reishi mushroom, or Ganoderma lucidum, is actually my favorite mushroom in the world. It's my favorite herb in the world, actually. I think if you're going to get into one herb, my personal recommendation is reishi because it's the most influential. It affects our spiritual expression. In the Chinese understanding, they would call this Shen. It's very powerful for cleansing the blood, for protecting the liver, for cycling toxins in and out of the liver, and really just for protecting our cardiovascular system or our heart. That's why it goes great with chocolate. So we're going to throw 1 tablespoon of reishi mushroom in there. And the Chinese there's many different names for reishi. It's the most scientifically studied herb in the world. It's called the herb of immortality, the herb of good fortune, because the Chinese believe the more reishi you consumed, the more lucky you become. So it seems to be an attractor type of energy going on. So if you believe in the law of attraction, take more reishi, it'll amplify that. The next thing is mucuna, like mucuna matata, have no worries. Well, what's funny about that is mucuna is an Ayurvedic herb from the Indian system of herbalism, and it's actually one of the most scientifically studied herbs in the world. And as I was studying it, I came across some very interesting research that mucuna actually is the #1 source of something called L-dopa. And very basically put, that helps our neurotransmitter synthesis in our brain, and it produces more dopamine. And dopamine is known as the pleasure system. So if people are feeling depressed, not quite all there, not really feeling that zest for life, there could be a dopamine deficiency, and that will lead to adrenal exhaustion, nervous system problems. Mucuna. That's what you want to be restoring, that pleasure center for life. Anyways, we're going to throw in about 1 tablespoon of the mucuna. Just sprinkle it on. And by the way, you know, I want to put this out there. When you're making your chocolate, you want to have some kind of intention. You want to have your attention on your intention, right? So not just what you want to create, but when I like to create the flavor, I like to spread it out. I like to sprinkle it all out. So when I go through the mixing system, which we'll get into in just a moment, everything is spread out and it's easier to synthesize together. The next herb we're going to do is ho, shu, wu. The Latin binomials, polygallum, multiflorum, but you could just call it faux tea in America. You might have heard of faux tea. Well, that's also ho, shu, wu. And there's a lot of amazing things going on with ho, shu, wu. Basically, in the Chinese system, it's known as a yin-jing herb. And what that means, just basically put, is that it's a restorative herb. And it's not just something you take once in a while. In fact, the Chinese believe that if you take this herb progressively and consistently throughout the years, it will create depths of energy in what's called your Jing bank account. That's your primordial life force. And if you're not taking care of your reserves, so to speak, your adrenal energy, you might experience an adrenal exhaustion and you might burn out. That's where something like this comes in hand. So we're going to sprinkle that around. Plus, another interesting fact about ho, shu, wu, which is also why it's synergistic with maca, is that it's been scientifically shown to increase sperm count in men. Maca has actually been shown to increase sperm count up to 50% in men. So we have a 50+ infertility rate in our world today, especially in the Western world. That's why things like ho, shu, wu, like maca, like cacao, some of these other hormone synthesizing and regulating foods and herbs are very helpful. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is one of my favorite herbs from the Ayurvedic system is ashwagandha. And ashwagandha is kind of known as the Indian ginseng, and if anyone knows about ginseng, you know that it's a very energetic producing herb. It would be classified as a qi herb in the Chinese system, and that's basically just like firepower, right? Like energy, quick, like boom, go, go, go. That's what that is. And that is balancing with the Jing energy. So ashwagandha is perfect for that. Actually, we're going to use, instead of doing a tablespoon of ashwagandha, we're going to do half a tablespoon. Because ashwagandha can be pretty potent, so we want to treat it with a little bit of respect. So we're just going to sprinkle that around. If anyone has any kind of like metabolic issues pertaining to like weight loss, or maybe their thyroid is out of balance, you want to look into ashwagandha, because there's a body of research indicating and correlating that ashwagandha can be very helpful for raising thyroid stimulating hormone and helping to regulate our metabolic system. So if someone has trouble losing weight, or they just don't have the energy to get up and go, ashwagandha is a great pick. All right, what else do we have here? Okay, let's jump back. Now we're going to jump back to some of the other accompanying ingredients to help with the flavor and help with the texture of our chocolate. The next thing we're going to do is coconut palm sugar. And, you know, this is just a dry sweetener, so we're going to incorporate the two different elements of sweetener. We're going to go with the dry sweeteners, and we're also going to go with the syrup sweetener, which would be our honey right here, to create like a really rich, extravagant type of herbal chocolate. So we're going to do just one tablespoon. Yeah, we're going to go with just 1 tablespoon, because don't forget, we still have the mesquite, the lucuma, the maca to balance that all out together. And we have our honey. So let's save the honey for a little later. The next thing we're going to do is cacao nibs. So a lot of times people like the, the Hershey's Crunch, right? I remember when I was younger, which wasn't that long ago when I look back on it, I used to eat those Hershey Crunches, and they had the little chips inside, right? And I thought that was like the most amazing thing, right? So actually we can recreate that and just put in cacao nibs. And if you're feeding this to your family, this is like the perfect thing. Really give it that nice crunch. So I think 1.5 tablespoons should be perfect for this formula. Boom. Okay. And what do we got? The next thing, let's throw in our last herb. Now we've done a whole compilation of herbs, but I think we have room for one more. And this is shilajit. And shilajit is, it's kind of a mineral pitch from the Himalayas. It's an Ayurvedic herb. The basic story behind this is that it's one of the most mineral concentrated substances in the world. So it's highly mineralized, and it has a whole bunch of different factors going on with it that just really great for, you know, the health of our body and our mind. And we're going to throw in, the one thing you need to know about shilajit though is that you don't want to do too much. It's like stevia. You got to start small, because if you do too much too quick, it's kind of like getting a bad haircut, right? You can go low, and you can go a little lower if you need to, but if you go too low, you can't go back. If you do too much shilajit, you can't go back on it. So we're actually only going to do, I think this is half a teaspoon, not tablespoon, but a teaspoon. So we're going to sprinkle that in. Actually, we can do another 1/4 teaspoon. Okay. And I'll leave that up to your own intuition and common sense, how you want to play with that. Okay, so now we're like 75% the way through on this. So I want to just kind of look at it, evaluate it, because remember, we have 1.5 cups of liquefied cacao butter. So we want to just make sure that, you know, we don't have too much dry powder disproportionate from our liquid base, because if you don't have enough liquid to match how much ingredients you have, it can be kind of like thick and brownie like, and we want to create that smooth texture, that crack pop texture when it's all said and done. The next thing I'm going to do is coconut butter. Now it's very important that we don't confuse coconut butter with coconut oil. If you put coconut oil into this mixture, it can still be good, but it's going to be very liquidy, and it's not going to be able to sustain or solidify at room temperature very well. So we're actually going to use the butter, and this is going to create kind of that, you know, coconut feel to your chocolate, add a little more fat to it. We're going to do just about 1 tablespoon, or I mean not tablespoon, or you know, we'll do 2 full spoons. And then that should be just enough. Just like that. Boom. Okay, I think we are ready to move on to our honey. I think everyone's waiting for that. Honey is definitely nature's most natural sweetener. If you're trying to figure out, you're on the natural food kick and you're like, okay, what's the best sweetener ever? If you don't have candida issues, blood sugar roller coaster type of issues, sugar sensitivities, then my opinion is honey. Honey is the most noble, one of the most noble substances from nature. All animals, especially bears, know this. The bee is an amazing creature that brings this to us. So we're going to use about, I say in this formula with all the other sweeteners we have, we don't want to do it like too sweet. We just want it to be really well balanced. So we're going to do 1 spoon, 1 heaping spoon, because I am a pretty big honey fanatic. Alright, that's perfect. Let it drizzle and drop. And a big part of when you're making your chocolate, you really want to just be in a state of appreciation and joy and gratitude. And I find that if I don't rush through it too much and I just kind of take my time like I am now, it kind of puts me in a state of heightened feeling state and just gratitude that we can have this. You know, the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Toltecs and the Olmecs of ancient Mexico, they didn't have this, right? When they were making chocolate, it was a little bit of a different story. And we get to bring in all the great elements all around the world and infuse it into one amazing chocolate concoction. So I like to always pay homage to that idea. This looks good, doesn't it? It's amazing that we don't have to go into the beehive to fight for our honey. We just get it just like this. I think that's pretty fantastic. The last thing I'm going to do before we create our whole mixture here is sea salt. One of the reasons we use sea salt as a culinary principle is that actually it binds on and amplifies the flavor profile of anything that you mix salt into. Is why salt is such a revered substance in the culinary arts. It's going to help bring out the sweetness and the rest of the kind of disparate flavor elements that are here. It's just going to make it pop more. So we're going to throw in, I think we have about, my recommendation is a 1/4 teaspoon of sea salt, or Himalayan rock salt's fine too. But this is sea salt, so we'll just throw it in there just like that. And I think we're ready to go. So the very last thing we're going to do is we have our butter. And this is going to be the intention setting part. So we'll get to that in just a moment, but let's pour it in. And when you do it counterclockwise, or I guess I'm going clockwise, and then I'll go back counterclockwise. We're going to add in kind of like some Rudolf Steiner principles to how we do this. Okay, and then when you're done, you don't want to waste the butter, so always make sure that you use everything you can. By the way, cacao butter, guys and gals, is the best moisturizer. And just a little fun fact on the side, if you were wondering what's the best thing to put onto your skin, it's definitely cacao butter, even better than coconut oil. In fact, if you know about the chocolate industry, you'll know that all those chocolate bars that have dairy filler or milk powdered filler, the reason that they have that in there is because they stripped out the cacao butter and sold it to the cosmetic industry, because they found out that cacao butter, or cocoa butter in that case, is the best thing for your skin. So we don't have to do that, but you can take that butter and just rub it all in. It's going to create a shine and glow that I know everyone is reaching for. So in the mixing process, this, in my opinion, when I'm asked, Ronnie, what is the most important part of chocolatiering? My personal opinion, once you've layered your ingredients, the next step is your mixing process. Because if you mix it, if you don't have enough intention, you'll have little grains in there and it won't come out as smooth as you want. So we're going to really get in here. First thing, before you do the egg beater, you just want to break it all up. Okay, great. I think we got a good ratio here. It's going to be really close. So you really want to just break it up really well. And when I do this, I go counterclockwise and clockwise both. And then I go up and down just like this to make sure I'm breaking up all those granules, all that powder, mixing and infusing in the honey. And this, in my opinion, is why my chocolate turns out the way that it does and why it tastes the way that it does, is because I put a lot of attention on my intention for the mixology aspect of this. And then when I'm doing this, I'm also, when I'm not talking on the camera, to myself, I'm silently going over my goals, my wishes, my aspirations. I'm doing a form of vision crafting because I'm in such reverence and gratitude that we even have all these amazing ingredients from all over the world to mix into our alchemy, that I really just want to internalize that idea. I mentioned earlier that when you heat the cacao butter, the crystalline structure starts to destructure. It starts to create a free form of molecules. Well, when it solidifies back up, those molecules start to reformulate. And I believe that it reformulates partly on your intention. So this is the opportunity to energetically infuse your chocolate with whatever your intention is, or your idea for what you want to create. And then that's locked into your chocolate. And so when you eat the chocolate, you don't just have a nice little physical medicinal bar, but you have an energetic amplifier to help coast you along your vision crafting. So let's put that there for now. Now, this is where we throw in the final part of the mixing process. So now we're going to whip this all up here. This is where we break up all the rest of the elements we have in here. I can't wait for this, guys. Now, I know you can't taste it from the other side of the camera, but man, I already know. I've done this long enough where I can already taste it right now. I know what it's going to taste like. I know the texture, how it's going to feel. This is quite possibly the best chocolate ever. Certainly at this moment. But hopefully you guys take a few notes and you taught me on this. I want you guys to escalate. Make way better chocolate than we're making now. We could really make some huge shifts right now just by making better and better chocolate and feeding the world this amazing food. Okay, so it looks like we are right there. Hold on, let me test. Hold on. Looks good. Okay. So now, what we're going to do, let's use this one. I want to put a quick thing out there for everyone. If you guys have molds, you can use a little funnel like this and actually pour into each mold. So you would just pour it into each mold and it'll slowly drip for precision. But we're just going to use like a nice spread like this and create more of just a flat layered chocolate. So I'm going to mix this up here, and this one will probably turn out like slightly, oh, you know what, it's pretty smooth. So we'll see. This is going to be interesting. So I'm going to pour it out like that. That looks absolutely fantastic. And we're still not done with the process. This is still part of the patient intention setting process here. I like to just take my time like an artist would. I mean, this isn't necessarily something you have to do, but I feel like chocolate creation, chocolatiering is definitely an art and a science. And I feel like the more attention you place upon it, It just turns out better in all fronts. Okay. We're ready to go. Okay. So the last thing we're going to do is just place it into the freezer. And now in its present state, it should only take about 15-20 minutes for it to be placed into your freezer. Then you got chocolate ready to serve. So we're going to do that now, and we will be back. Alright guys, we are here for the final stage, and probably most people's favorite part is the finish line. So this is the chocolate that we created, and it's all done. In fact, this only took about 10 minutes. I thought it'd be 15 to 20, but it only took about 10 minutes to form our fully functional, decadent, herbal superfood raw chocolate. And I have to say, I just tasted some, and I had my guest behind the camera do a little taste testing, and it all checks out. It's all good to go. I think I'm going to take a quick little snag here. Smooth, a little grainy, but overall, it clears. So if you guys want to make your own chocolate, now you have the recipe, you have the formula, so you guys can make it all and use your own intuition, play with it. The cool thing about chocolate is that it vibes based on the personality of the person making the chocolate. So whatever energy you want to imbue upon it, you are free to do that. And I want to put out a quick note is that for most people that know me, you know that I just released my raw herbal chocolate bar line, which is cardiozoic cacao. And our first bar is the Genius Bar. And this is, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion in Los Angeles, California, one of the world's most functional superfood herbal chocolate bars. And without doing a whole commercial on it, we've used some of the most potent and specifically chosen brain activating, blood flow enhancing herbs in the world, and used it with chocolate as the delivery system. And this is a very effective chocolate bar. It gets things going. So definitely check that out, cardiozoiccacao.com. The link is right below. And if you're in Los Angeles, California, and you see me, I may be carrying one of these little Myron glasses, and filled within it are chocolate samples. So if you catch me, just let me know, hey, I want to try that chocolate. I'll have my little vial on me, and I'll hook you guys up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this chocolate alchemy creating video. Maybe I'll do more videos later on the same thing. If you guys have any ideas for what you would like to see me create or talk about, leave a comment below, and I will work on obliging that. So until next time, take care and enjoy.